I was rinsing a coffee mug when Calden walked into the kitchen, arms crossed, jaw set. He stood in front of the sink like he was blocking my way out, though I hadn't planned to leave. Not yet. "Mom," he said flatly, "we've decided. Arden's parents are moving in. It makes more sense for them to be here." I blinked, unsure I'd heard him right. The water kept running warm over my fingers. "What do you mean, more sense?" "This is my house." He didn't even blink. "Not anymore. We need the space. You'll figure something out." Arden appeared in the doorway, her phone in one hand, glass of wine in the other. She leaned on the frame like she'd been rehearsing this moment. "She still doesn't get it?" she asked, not looking up from her screen. I turned back to my son. "Where am I supposed to go, Calden?" He shrugged. "Go to hell," he said. "I don't care." My heart didn't break. It stopped. For one beat, maybe two. I looked at him, at the boy I'd once fed, with bruised hands and stitched jackets for during winter breaks. I waited for the flinch, the apology. It never came. Behind him, Arden was already measuring the wall with her eyes, mentally placing her family's portraits where mine used to hang. I dried my hands slowly on the kitchen towel and placed the mug down. The silence between us stretched so long it started to feel like an answer. Then I smiled. Not wide, not warm, just enough to unsettle them. "All right," I said quietly. Calden blinked as if surprised I didn't argue. Arden smirked. I turned and walked out of the kitchen. My steps didn't echo, but I felt the weight of everyone. Upstairs, I closed my bedroom door with care, the way I used to when he was little and already asleep. The closet creaked open. The same suitcase I packed for the hospital when he was born still sat on the top shelf. I reached for it. The suitcase landed on the bed heavier than I remembered. Maybe it wasn't the weight. Maybe it was memory. I pulled open the dresser drawers slowly, carefully. Every shirt I folded carried a decade. The gray one Silas bought me for my first birthday as a wife. The flannel he always said made me look like I belonged in the mountains even though I hated the cold. The sweatshirt Calden gave me in high school, back when he still called me Mama and brought me bent dandelions from the yard. Downstairs, Arden laughed. That thin, breathy kind of laugh that didn't belong in this house. It echoed off the wood I sanded myself. Silas and I built this place 27 years ago. We couldn't afford contractors, so we did what we always did. We figured it out. He laid the foundation, and I held every beam steady. I remember us pouring concrete by flashlight because his shifts at the docks kept him late. I remember painting the walls with leftover cans we collected from garage sales. The green in the hallway that was actually meant for someone's nursery. After Silas died, I didn't cry in this room. I just worked. I picked up commissions on the side, made custom chairs and garden benches, sold them at the Saturday market. At night, I'd mark the due dates on the mortgage calendar, draw a little heart on each one I managed to cover. I'd lie awake sometimes, listening to Calden breathe through the thin walls, and pray I'd kept just enough gas in the truck to get to work and back. The shirt in my hands trembled. Not from cold, but from the betrayal that stained it now. I folded it anyway, just like I always did. There was a scuff on the wall from the time Calden threw a rubber ball too hard. I never painted over it. Thought I'd want to remember how small he once was. I reached for the wedding photo on the nightstand. The frame was dusty. Silas's smile had faded slightly behind the glass. I wondered what he'd say if he saw what this house had become. I placed the photo in the suitcase, face down. It started 6 months ago when Arden brought me a cup of herbal tea I never asked for and asked me how I handled things like inheritance. I remember the way she smiled, tight-lipped, rehearsed. She set the cup down and tilted her head like she was just making conversation. "Calden says you've never written a will," she said lightly, like it was nothing. "It's smart to get ahead of that stuff, you know. I didn't say much that day. Just nodded, smiled back, and dumped the tea down the sink when she wasn't looking. That night, I dug through my closet until I found Lisa Carter's card. She and I went to school together back before last names mattered. She went on to become a real estate attorney in the next county. I hadn't seen her in years, but when she picked up, her voice sounded exactly the same. I told her everything quietly, carefully. How Calden had stopped helping around the house. How Arden started taking calls in my living room, talking about our place like I wasn't even there. How she once asked to see the property deed just for a refinance check. Lisa didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said, "Let's protect what's yours before they think it's theirs." A week later, I sat in her office, signing papers. I didn't fully understand, but trusted her to manage. The house was transferred into a private trust. Legally, it was no longer mine. It belonged to Lisa, held under my name with stipulations only I could unlock. No one knew. Not Calden, not Arden, not even Katie, who's known me since Calden was still in diapers. I didn't tell them because I didn't want to fight. I told myself I was just being cautious. But now, folding clothes into a suitcase while my son laughed downstairs with the woman who thought she'd won, I realized I wasn't just being cautious. I was preparing. I zipped the bag shut and stood for a moment listening to the muffled clink of wine glasses below. They were celebrating. I hadn't said a word, but the house already wasn't theirs. The sun woke me before the alarm did. Katie's guest bed creaked when I shifted the mattress too soft for a body used to hard truth. I sat up slowly, letting the silence settle around me. She'd left a note on the kitchen table the night before. "Stay as long as you need. Coffee's in the top cabinet." I hadn't touched it. I wasn't ready for warmth. Instead, I stared at the light filtering through the blinds until my phone buzzed beside me. Then again. Then again. 5 notifications, then 20. Messages. Missed calls. Mentions. I clicked the first one with a trembling thumb, not sure what I was expecting. There it was. Arden's face, cropped to perfection, lips parted in a sorrowful smile. Her caption sat above the photo like a knife dressed in lace. My cruel mother-in-law kicked us out. "I'm pregnant. We have nowhere to go. I don't know how a mother could be so heartless." Beneath it, hundreds of comments. How could she do that to her own son? What kind of monster throws out a pregnant woman? She should rot. Each word landed like a slap. Each lie stuck harder than the truth ever had. I scrolled slower, my breath shallow. That's when I saw it. It was buried in a reply almost casual. Arden had written it like it meant nothing. We were planning to fix the house and maybe sell it to start our new life. I read that sentence twice, then 3 more times. They weren't just trying to take my home. They were planning to profit from it. I dropped the phone onto the comforter like it had burned me. The room spun. My ears rang with Arden's laughter, Calden's silence, the way he wouldn't meet my eyes at the door. I wasn't just erased. I was rewritten. And she was the one holding the pen. I reached for the phone again, not to respond, not to fight. I opened Lisa's contact. Then I hit call. Lisa answered on the second ring. "I saw it," she said before I could speak. I didn't ask how. She always knew things before I did. She put it in writing. I said, my voice tighter than I expected. She said they planned to sell it. There was a pause. Then a low exhale. That's not just slander, Mireya. That's intent. Publicly stating a plan to sell property you don't legally own. That's evidence. The word hit me like a jolt, evidence. For months they had twisted reality in quiet, behind closed doors. But now Arden had posted her ambition for everyone to see. Proof, in her own words, that their plan wasn't just cruel, it was criminal. "I'm filing," Lisa said. "We're not just enforcing the eviction clause now, we're pressing forward under misrepresentation and attempted fraud." I didn't respond right away. I stood by the window in Katie's kitchen, the phone pressed between my shoulder and cheek, watching the fog rise over the rooftops. A mug of black coffee sat in my hands, untouched, but warm. "They'll know it's me," I said quietly. "Yes," Lisa said, "but they'll also know you were never the fool they took you for." For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a woman on the outside looking in. I didn't feel erased, discarded, irrelevant. I felt real. "I want to move forward," I said. "No more soft landings." "You're sure I'm sure?" She didn't hesitate. "All right. I'll send someone to deliver the notice tomorrow morning. They'll have 72 hours to vacate. If they don't, we escalate." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Let them read it in the kitchen, where they tried to forget I ever lived." When the call ended, I just stood there, hands wrapped around the coffee mug, letting the heat seep through my skin. No tears, no shaking, no need to explain myself to anyone. Outside, a bird perched on the railing, watching the world with a kind of still patience. I lifted the mug to my lips and took the first sip. It was bitter, and exactly what I needed. At exactly 9:12 a.m., I checked the clock on Katie's kitchen wall and imagined the knock. It would have been sharp, deliberate, not the kind you ignore. Lisa said her associate was punctual to the minute. I had no doubt. I sat at the small breakfast table, hands wrapped around another mug of coffee, not for comfort, but for focus. I didn't need to be there to see it. I could picture it down to the chipped corner of the porch step. Arden probably opened the door first. She always moved fast when she thought she was in charge. I imagined her robe, her smile forced and brittle. Her voice clipped. Yes, she'd say, phone already in her hand, ready to document whatever inconvenience stood in front of her. And then the words, "Are you Mrs. Arden Baird?" A pause, her frown, her hesitation. Then the envelope. "This property is under legal trust and is not yours to occupy. You have 72 hours to vacate. Failure to comply will result in legal escalation." I could almost hear her voice crack just slightly before the shouting started. "She never said anything about this. This is harassment. We're calling our lawyer." Except they didn't have a lawyer. They had assumptions and a Wi-Fi password. Calden would have come into the room. Second, maybe still barefoot, groggy from sleep or arrogance. He'd ripped the papers from the man's hand, his voice rising faster than his logic. "You can't do this," he'd say. "You can't kick us out of our house." But it wasn't theirs. It never was. I sat with the weight of that knowledge in my chest. Not gloating, not smug. Just still. They had laughed in my kitchen. Toasted over wine I paid for. Whispered behind doors I built. And now, for the first time, those walls weren't listening to them. They were listening to the truth. I stood and placed the empty mug in the sink. The sound of ceramic on porcelain crisp in the quiet. By tomorrow, the house would start remembering who it belonged to. And so would they. The first call came at 9:43 a.m. I watched it ring, Calden's name flashing like a wound I hadn't touched yet. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again. 6 times, in under an hour. I didn't answer until the 6th. Not because I wanted to hear his voice, but because I needed to hear what it would sound like now that he knew. "Hello," I said, flat, steady. His voice exploded through the receiver. "What the hell did you do?" I didn't reply right away. Let him sit with his own fury. "A lawyer showed up this morning," he snapped. "He said we have to leave. That this house isn't even yours anymore. What kind of twisted game is this?" I took a breath. "It's not a game. It's a consequence. You didn't even warn us. You just what ambushed us. I protected myself," I said simply. "You owe me, Mom. I'm your son." The words landed with the weight of expectation, entitlement. Like that alone should make me erase everything that had happened. Like biology was currency. "No," I said, my voice low and even. "I owed you protection. I gave it. I owed you love. I gave that too." Silence. Just his breathing on the other end. You chose her, Calden. And she chose greed. You let her speak to me like I was a stain in my own home. He scoffed, but it sounded thinner than before. We needed a future. We were trying to build something. You tried to build it on something that didn't belong to you. He started to speak again, but I cut in. I built that house. I built you. And the second you needed room for someone else, you handed me an eviction. That's not fair. What wasn't fair? I said sharply. Was you telling me to go to hell when all I ever did was make sure you never landed there? He didn't speak again, just silence, then a click. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand, then placed it face down on the table. It didn't ring again. But another notification lit the screen. It took less than 48 hours for the headline to spread. Local couple under investigation for attempted real estate fraud. Their wedding photo was center column Arden in white Calden, looking unsure even then. The article spelled it out, clearly attempted sale of a property not legally owned, misrepresentation, and possible civil penalties. The comments were swift. The same strangers who'd called me a monster days ago now turned their aim on Arden. She lied to everyone. Trying to sell someone else's home, that's low. So much for the poor pregnant victim act. I didn't smile. Not exactly, but the weight in my chest loosened just enough to let me breathe without flinching. The post she had written to destroy me had become her confession. Later that night, my phone lit up with a message request. I knew the number. I didn't need to open it to know what it would say. But I did. Please don't ruin us. We have nowhere else to go. Not signed, but it didn't have to be. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen not to reply, but to feel the quiet power of not answering. She hadn't messaged me when she mocked me. She hadn't reached out when she poured herself a glass of wine in my kitchen and laughed like I was already gone. But now that the floor beneath her feet cracked, now she wanted mercy. I tapped the message, held it, then hit mark as unread. Let her wonder, let her feel the silence she carved out of me. Katie walked into the room with folded laundry and set it beside me without a word. She didn't ask what the article said, didn't ask who the message was from. She just gave me space. I sat with the weight of it all, pain, history, grief, and felt none of it owned me anymore. The house was still standing, but the lies weren't. Another message buzzed through this time from Lisa. Tomorrow's filing is ready. Want to make it official? I picked up the phone. Lisa's office was quiet when I arrived. The kind of quiet that settles in once all the choices have already been made. She slid the folder across the desk like it was just paperwork. But we both knew it was heavier than that. Once you sign, she said gently, we move forward. No more warnings. No more delays. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake, but my chest did. It felt like I was signing a birth certificate in reverse, cutting the cord from someone I once carried. I pressed the tip to the page and wrote my name slowly. With each letter, I felt the years peel back the scraped knees. I kissed the school projects I stayed up late to help with, the nights I stared at the ceiling, praying I'd done enough. When I was done, Lisa gave a small nod. It's done. I leaned back in the chair and let the weight of it all press down on me. My phone buzzed in my bag. I reached for it, not expecting anything. It was Calden. One message. Just 6 words. I'm sorry, Mom. I messed everything up. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Just stared at the screen like it held something sacred and broken. He hadn't said that before. Not once. Not when I packed. Not when the lawyer came. Not even when Arden's post went up. I could feel that small part of me, the one that never stopped being his mother, wanting to believe that maybe, just maybe, this meant something. I opened the message. Typed 3 different replies. Deleted each one. Then finally, slowly, I wrote, I'll always love you. But I can't save you from yourself. I stared at the sentence for a long time before pressing send. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't soft. It was just true. Lisa was already gathering the documents when I stood. I thanked her, and she placed a hand gently on my shoulder. Outside, the wind felt sharper than before, but I welcomed it. The next morning, the doorbell rang again. 6 months later, my mornings begin with flour under my nails and silence in my chest. The apartment above the bakery is no bigger than the living room I once had, but it holds me just fine. I rise before the sun, tie my apron, and knead dough, while the rest of the world still sleeps. No voices, no footsteps, no expectations. Just the rhythm of my hands pressing into something that will rise. When the first batch goes into the oven, I sit at the small table by the window with a chipped mug of black coffee. Outside, the sky blushes pink. The air smells like salt and fresh bread. For the first time in years, I don't flinch at either. There's a photo on the shelf, me and Silas in front of the old house 29 years ago. He's got sawdust in his hair. I'm holding the level, and we're both laughing like the world hasn't even started yet. I look at it sometimes when the quiet gets too loud. I walk by the ocean every evening. Not to think, not to grieve, just to remember that I made it. I survived a kind of ending that doesn't come with a funeral. Katie visits on Sundays. She brings oranges and stories about her grandkids. Lisa sends the occasional update Calden and Arden moved states. Settled somewhere with cheaper rent and fewer questions. No charges were filed, just a quiet legal agreement. The house sold, but not for what they hoped. It never could have been worth what it cost them. I haven't heard from Calden since that last message. I haven't tried to reach out. Some things don't unbreak, but I think of him. Not in anger, not in ache. Just as a fact of my life, like weather something I once stood in, until I found shelter. Tonight, I walked home as the tide crept in. The water kissed the shore with quiet insistence. I stood there, letting the wind press against my skin, and I said it softly, not for anyone else to hear. I survived. Then I turned, went upstairs, and locked the door behind me.